Princess Charlotte prepare for royal duties? As criticism of the British royal family grows, amid claims that the working royals are too old,
an ordinary private family lunch at Windsor Castle collapsed in a single, terrifying second. It wasn't shattered by an explosive royal scandal. It wasn't broken by a heated shouting match. It was shattered by one devastating sentence, spoken in surgical calm by a 9-year-old girl. Princess Charlotte locked eyes directly with the Queen consort across the heavy mahogany table. She didn't blink. She delivered a sentence so precise and unscripted that the entire room froze in absolute place. Like this video if you want more royal deep dives, and subscribe to Vintage Exposed so you never miss what happens next. The Shattered Lunch. Windsor Castle is built on centuries of rigid tradition. Its thick stone walls are designed to keep secrets in. Its heavy oak doors are designed to keep the public out. Inside the private dining room, the atmosphere was perfectly and carefully curated. King Charles was seated formally at the head of the long mahogany table. He wore his usual tailored suit. He projected the quiet authority of a reigning monarch. Prince William and Princess Catherine sat closely nearby. Their 3 children were seated with them. It was supposed to be a normal family gathering. Queen Camilla had been making a very deliberate, conscious effort to keep the conversation light. She was trying to keep the mood easy. She knew that recent institutional friction had made private family meals feel uncomfortably sensitive. The palace was always watching. The staff was always listening. For the first half hour, absolutely everyone played their assigned royal roles. Polite smiles were exchanged across the silver cutlery. Fine porcelain teacups clinked gently against matching saucers. The delicate illusion of domestic warmth was being carefully maintained. It was maintained mostly for the benefit of the household staff moving quietly like ghosts around the perimeter of the room. Then the conversation shifted. Camilla casually, almost breezily, referred to herself as belonging to the children's grandparent generation. It was a throwaway comment, a simple conversational bridge. But Princess Charlotte stopped moving her cutlery. The heavy silver fork rested against her china plate. There was no clatter, just a sudden, deliberate stillness. She looked up from her lunch. She bypassed the flowers in the center of the table. She bypassed her father. She bypassed the king. She locked her eyes directly onto the queen consort. The 9-year-old princess did not raise her voice. She did not whine. She did not throw a childish tantrum. She delivered a sentence so utterly cold, so mathematically precise, that the air seemed to vanish from the dining room instantly. I already know who my grandmothers are, and I will not call you grandmother. The room didn't erupt. Nobody gasped out loud. The highly trained courtiers standing rigidly near the heavy wooden doors didn't dare scramble to intervene. No adult desperately jumped in with a quick, loud distraction to change the subject. Instead, the dining room descended into a suffocating, terrifying silence. It was the kind of silence that rings loudly in your ears. It was the silence of a truth nobody is ever supposed to say out loud. The suffocating silence. The silence stretched across the long dining room like a sheet of pure ice. In those agonizing, endless seconds, every single adult present realized exactly what had just happened. Charlotte had not made a mistake. She had not misspoken. She had made a conscious, deliberate, and entirely permanent choice, and Queen Camilla knew it instantly. King Charles heard his young granddaughter's sharp words. His immediate, visceral instinct was to step in. He was both a grandfather and the reigning monarch of the United Kingdom. He was used to absolute obedience. He was used to controlling the temperature of any room he walked into. His voice remained low, but it carried the heavy, distinct weight of sovereign authority. He looked across the long table at Charlotte. He fully expected an embarrassed, childlike apology. He expected her to lower her gaze immediately, or at least offer an innocent explanation that could be rapidly smoothed over with traditional royal diplomacy. He looked her directly in the eyes. He asked her gently, but firmly, why she would ever say such a thing. Charlotte did not flinch. She did not look down at her lap. She did not seek her mother's eyes for permission to speak. She looked directly back at the King of England, and she answered him with a heavy wisdom that was entirely beyond her 9 years of age. Some family names have to be earned by how people make you feel. It was a staggering statement. Palace courtiers did not secretly coach her. Her parents had not rehearsed her in secret. She was plainly stating an unyielding personal boundary. Before anyone in the paralyzed room could even begin to formulate a proper royal reaction, Charlotte moved. She politely formally asked if she could be excused from the table. Princess Catherine did not hesitate. She gave a quiet, incredibly firm nod of approval. Charlotte pushed her heavy, antique chair backward. The harsh, grinding sound of the wood dragging aggressively against the polished floorboards was deafening. It was louder than anything actually spoken that entire afternoon. Queen Camilla remained completely frozen in her seat. Her face had gone chalky and pale. She was staring blindly down at her untouched plate. King Charles stared across the wide table directly at his eldest son, Prince William. The king suddenly painfully realized that no royal decree, no palace protocol, and absolutely no monarchical authority could ever undo what had just transpired in front of him. William didn't scold his daughter. He didn't order her to sit back down in her chair. He didn't demand she apologize to the queen consort. He sat there in silence. He watched his daughter confidently walk out of the grand room. He watched her with a look of intense, quiet, absolute protection. It was a powerful look that revealed absolutely everything about where his true, ultimate loyalties lay. When finally forced to choose between managing palace optics and protecting his child's heart, William chose his child. Catherine quietly slipped out of the tense dining room. She followed Charlotte down the long, gilded corridor of the private royal residence. That was the exact moment the real, hidden story finally began to surface. Because this public confrontation was not a sudden burst of disrespect, it was a reaction. Weeks earlier, a deeply private, hidden encounter had occurred entirely behind closed doors. It was a painful encounter that Princess Charlotte had been carrying in complete, heavy isolation ever since. The secret in the corridor. Catherine walked softly into her daughter's private bedroom and sat down gently on the edge of Charlotte's bed. She chose not to start with stern lectures, palace discipline, or reminders of royal protocol. Instead, she reached out and wrapped her arms tightly around her young daughter. With a gentle and soft tone, she asked Charlotte what the word grandmother meant to her. The honest answer came out slowly, punctuated by quiet, shaky breaths. For the 9-year-old Charlotte, a grandmother represented trust, unconditional and unbreakable safety, and shared whispered stories in the dark. She embodied someone who made her feel deeply and fiercely protected. In contrast, Charlotte did not see a grandmother as someone who imposed quiet pressure, constant management, or political arrangements. Growing up surrounded by heavy, formal titles, words like queen, sovereign, crown, and heir defined her public world and the massive, crushing duties expected of her family. However, to a young, observant child, simple family language carries a sacred and deeply private weight. Catherine instantly understood this critical emotional distinction. In that moment, she silently vowed never to force her daughter to transform her genuine human feelings into a false royal performance for the sake of public relations. Meanwhile, in a highly decorated wing of Windsor Castle, Queen Camilla was reeling from the sheer humiliation of the earlier lunch. She sat alone in a private sitting room with Charles, her usual practiced composure completely shattered. With her voice shaking, she confessed to the king that she had patiently endured decades of hostile newspaper headlines and public mockery. She had survived relentless daily comparisons to Princess Diana. However, she now faced a painful truth. She could not ignore that a direct verbal rejection from his own granddaughter had deeply affected her. Charles tried his best to comfort his distressed wife. He assured her softly that Charlotte was very young and promised that the princess would eventually come around once the emotional dust settled. But the king hesitated ever so slightly before delivering those comforting words, a tiny pause that cut Camilla deeper than he intended. After over 20 years of desperately seeking genuine acceptance within the royal family, Charlotte's flat refusal had violently highlighted a terrifying reality. Despite her new title and the crown on her head, ceremonial rank could not force genuine affection from the next generation. Later that same evening, Prince William met Catherine in their private, secure quarters away from their sleeping children. The room was dark, and the mood was incredibly tense. He looked at his wife and asked the one specific question they had both been hesitating to voice all day. Did she mention Diana? Catherine nodded slowly. She confirmed that their daughter had indeed become deeply, naturally curious about the grandmother she had never been able to meet. This curiosity grew especially strong after listening to William's warm stories and quietly looking through old family photograph albums. However, Catherine added something far more troubling. Charlotte was not simply rejecting Camilla because Diana had been mythologized in her young mind. No, Charlotte was actively rejecting Camilla because of something Camilla had said to her in secret weeks earlier. William immediately stood up and walked down the quiet, carpeted hallway toward Charlotte's bedroom. He reached for the cold brass doorknob, but paused. The future king realized he was standing at a critical crossroads in his life. The demands of royal institutional harmony insisted on silence and compliance, but his sacred duty as a protective father called for truth and defense. He had to decide right then and there. Would he enter that bedroom as a prince, strictly maintaining palace discipline? Or would he enter as a father, fiercely guarding his daughter's fragile trust? He turned the handle and stepped inside. He sat beside his daughter in the dim light, and Charlotte finally revealed the painful secret she had been hiding from everyone. Everything had changed during an informal family heritage gathering at Windsor Castle weeks earlier. It was supposed to be a highly private event, showcasing historical family objects, ancient heirlooms, and candid photographs, away from public cameras and the pressures of royal duties. William had always kept the memory of his late mother simple, warm, and deeply personal for his 3 young children. He spoke of Diana exclusively as their grandmother, recounting her loud laughter, her famous mischief, and her fierce, unconditional love. He had never used her memory as a political weapon against anyone currently in the royal household. During that quiet heritage gathering, Charlotte naturally paused beside a small table where a silver frame held a beautiful, candid portrait of Diana. She gently touched the frame and innocently called the woman in the picture Grandmother Diana. At that precise, vulnerable moment, Queen Camilla walked quietly into the room. She overheard the 9-year-old's soft words and stopped. Looking directly at the young princess, she delivered a calm but sharply pointed correction. You shouldn't become too attached to people you never knew when you have real family standing right in front of you. Though spoken quietly and almost conversationally, Camilla's words had a devastating impact on the sensitive young girl. Charlotte immediately closed the heavy photograph album she had been happily studying, looked down at her small hands, and quietly asked her father if they could please stop looking at pictures for the day. William instantly sensed a drastic shift in the room's atmosphere, but he had no idea of the full, painful extent of the emotional damage. He hadn't heard those whispered words, the overheard betrayal. The psychological damage didn't end with that one sharp comment. Later that same day, an even more damaging, completely unseen incident occurred. Charlotte quietly left the drawing room to go upstairs. Halfway down the hall, she realized she had accidentally forgotten a small, braided bracelet on a side table. As she silently walked back down the carpeted corridor toward the open doorway, she heard voices. She stopped in the shadows, overhearing Queen Camilla speaking privately to a very senior palace aide in the adjacent hallway. Camilla sounded frustrated and irritated about the past. She remarked flatly that the constant emotional references to Diana were only going to confuse the children as they grow up. The senior aide said very little in response, simply nodding in polite agreement. But 9-year-old Charlotte, standing just out of sight, heard every single word perfectly. To her young and perceptive mind, the hidden message was painfully clear. Remembering her deceased beloved grandmother was being treated as an inconvenient problem, one that the adults wanted to manage, minimize, and eventually erase. Instead of entering the room, Charlotte turned and walked away. She kept that immense, confusing pain locked tightly inside her small chest for weeks. She didn't throw a tantrum in the hallway. She didn't run crying to demand a tearful explanation from her parents. She didn't tell a single soul what she had overheard. Instead, her young mind began to work, leading her to a firm and private conclusion. If accepting Camilla as a grandmother meant participating in erasing or betraying Princess Diana's sacred memory, she would completely refuse to use the title at all. Prince William sat perfectly still on the edge of the bed, listening as his daughter recounted the painful incident. His face grew paler by the second. His jaw tightened and his knuckles turned white as he gripped the mattress. The shocking confrontation at the Windsor lunch table had not been a random act of childish disobedience. It wasn't a lack of manners, it was the final, brilliant execution of a massive emotional boundary. A boundary that a 9-year-old girl had been silently building for weeks to protect her dead grandmother's memory. By nightfall, the key question inside Kensington Palace had completely shifted. It was no longer whether Princess Charlotte had misbehaved at a formal lunch. Prince William didn't care about the lunch anymore. He desperately wanted to know why an adult had placed his 9-year-old daughter in such a toxic position, forcing her to defend her dead grandmother. Queen Camilla was about to face that exact terrifying question directly. The heir's ultimatum. William did not pick up the phone to call for the senior palace advisors. He absolutely did not request a formal official household meeting with private secretaries taking notes in the corner. Instead, he bypassed the entire royal machine. He formally requested a direct, completely private, face-to-face conversation with Queen Camilla. He waited patiently until she entered the designated room, ensuring that the heavy, soundproof oak doors were firmly closed behind her. Then, he looked her directly in the eye and made his furious stance crystal clear. There would be absolutely no discussion regarding Charlotte's public behavior at the lunch table. None. Not until they thoroughly and painfully addressed exactly what had been said to his young daughter in secret. William deliberately excluded King Charles from this meeting. He knew exactly how his father operated. He understood that the king's presence would automatically instinctively shift the conversation away from emotion and toward royal rank. Charles would make it about protocol, about monarchical authority, and about public relations. Those were the exact toxic influences William refused to let govern his daughter's inner emotional life. This specific conflict was not about who technically outranked a 9-year-old princess on a piece of parchment. It was strictly about who held the moral right to govern a young child's heart and her private memories. Camilla entered the sitting room, fully expecting William to angrily demand a formal apology for the public embarrassment at the dining table. She had prepared her defense and was ready to talk about respect. Instead, she found a furious father who was fiercely guarding his child against emotional manipulation. William stood tall before the queen consort. He didn't yell or raise his voice a single decibel. He asked the razor-sharp, devastating question she had been dreading. "Did you tell my daughter that remembering my mother was confusing?" Camilla's usual highly polished composure completely faltered. She took a step back and stammered slightly, desperately attempting to defend herself. She explained that the remark overheard near the doorway was never intended for Charlotte's young ears and was merely a thoughtless, offhand comment made in passing to a staff member. William's expression hardened into pure, unbreakable ice. "Intention does not erase impact," he told her, his voice trembling with deeply controlled, cold anger. He methodically explained exactly what those careless words had done to an innocent child's mind. He shared that Charlotte now firmly believed that offering Camilla any basic emotional affection meant actively betraying Princess Diana's memory. Camilla's practiced defense cracked under the weight of the truth. In a rare moment of emotional vulnerability, she broke down. She admitted to William, her voice shaking, that she had spent over 25 agonizing years living in the massive shadow of a woman who had died long ago. She confessed that every public mention of Diana, every old photograph brought out of the archives, and every glowing story told made her feel completely worthless. It made her feel as though there was no room left for her to exist within the family. William listened to her confession in absolute silence, but he did not back down. He felt a brief flash of pity for her, but a father's duty immediately replaced it. He delivered an unyielding verdict. "My daughter was never asking you to compete with a ghost. She was never asking you to compete with a memory." He stepped closer. "Nobody has forbidden Charlotte from caring about you. But hear me now, no one will ever command my daughter to use a family name she does not truly mean." Camilla looked up at the Prince of Wales, wiping a tear from her eye. She asked him softly, her voice barely a whisper, whether that was merely his personal opinion or a strict rule for the royal household. William answered her with chilling simplicity, "When it comes to my children, Catherine and I decide." Camilla fell completely silent. The defensive anger vanished from her posture, replaced by profound humiliation. In that moment, she realized that William had successfully established a massive, impenetrable boundary within the palace. King Charles might hold the heavy crown on his head, but attempting to force a young, grieving princess to manufacture fake affection on demand would make royal authority appear tyrannical and incredibly cruel to the watching public. And William knew it. The king's surrender and the empty chair. King Charles learned the full details of a serious family issue. He immediately asked for a private meeting with his eldest son, William. The king faced a difficult choice. Should he protect his wife's public image or respect his son's desire to safeguard his daughter Charlotte's feelings? In their meeting, no courtiers or aides were present. King Charles tried to frame the disagreement as a threat to family unity. He warned William that a public rift between the heir to the throne and the queen consort could undermine the crown's stability. However, William did not change his mind. He made a clear distinction between public behavior and personal feelings. He assured his father that Princess Charlotte would follow royal protocol in public, bowing, curtsying, and smiling for the cameras. But the term grandmother belonged to their private lives, not to royal duties. William warned Charles not to push this issue. He said forcing Charlotte to apologize would teach her a harmful lesson, that an adult can dictate what a child feels. After a painful pause, King Charles finally lowered his head and agreed with William. He decided not to force Charlotte to apologize and would not interfere. He upheld William's parental boundaries. When Queen Camilla learned of this decision, she chose to withdraw from family gatherings she usually attended. This created a noticeable distance within the family. The first sign of this rift was an empty chair at an afternoon tea where Charlotte was supposed to be present. When 9-year-old Charlotte entered the tea room, she noticed the empty chair. She stopped and asked Catherine if Queen Camilla stayed away because of her. Catherine knelt beside Charlotte and looked her in the eyes. She gave a thoughtful response that every parent should remember. Adults are responsible for their own choices and feelings. Charlotte, you spoke your truth politely and bravely. You never have to fix a grown adult simply because you were honest. What are your thoughts on Princess Charlotte standing her ground against the Queen Consort? And what do you think about Prince William risking the crown's wrath to protect his daughter's emotional boundaries? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this look into palace psychology interesting, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and click the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next royal story.